What's up, Liron here, and in this episode of Painting Masters, we're going to look at Shari Blaukopf. What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another episode of Painting Masters. In this episode, we're going to take a more of a contemporary turn, and we're going to look at work by Shari Blaukopf. The reason I say contemporary turn is she's more of a contemporary artist of our time, but I do want in the future or in the next few episodes to go back to some older masters. Okay, I'm just letting you know as a side note. But in any case, today's Shari Blaukopf. Her artwork is amazing, beautiful, vibrant, colorful, and there's an interesting story behind it. She's a Canadian watercolor painter and graphic designer. Now, the interesting story is that originally I came into the world of watercolor from the angle of urban sketching. I loved pen sketching. I always loved it, just the looseness and the boldness and the immediacy of putting a line there and getting a beautiful result that's still very spontaneous. And then I saw that a lot of people use paint, and I was in awe of the use of paint, which is very loose and all over. And then I started researching and all that. What is that? That's watercolor. And then I got into the world of watercolor, and this was my angle. So Shari Blaukopf, she has that style that's a little more urban sketchy-esque kind of style. She's also, I believe, a urban sketchers instructor. Approved by Urban Sketchers. That's an entire thing, and so I have a very warm place in my heart for that particular style that is very vibrant, very fun, and there are a few other artists I want to review of that particular style that I really like. So her work, she has that, but she also has a tint of bit of realism, I would say. She has realistic lights and shadows. It's not abstract or anything like that, but it's more stylized, more urban sketchy kind of style, which I love. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna look at her work, then we're gonna focus on one artwork, and we're really gonna break that down and how she approached it, one that I think is really unique. So with that being said, let's get started.
Okay, so let's get started, and I'm starting with this beautiful painting. I love how she conveys the sunshine and the sunlight, and the shadows are so beautiful. And one thing that I'm going to mention over and over again, let me zoom out a bit just so you can see it in a bit more of a zoomed out manner. One thing I will mention probably over and over again throughout this video is how much I love the way she treats color selection. That's one thing that I think I have a lot to learn still. And I just love the way she treated it in this example. And notice how she kind of worked in areas, lots of negative painting around the rooftop here, around that chimney, and there's some empty gaps showing the paper white, and it looks beautiful. It's a very different approach compared to the many paintings that we've seen here in this series and many other artists. A bit more stylistic, a bit more colorful and happy and free. Here's another beautiful one that I really love, and you know I always love buildings. That's just the way I am. So this is one that I really loved as well. Let me show you another one. We've got this with all of the different houses and all of these negative painting of the foliage around it just creates a beautiful play of colors and of just shapes. You know, there's very simple shapes here, but it still works into a nice composition. And notice the simplicity in the reflection. There's no ripple effect. It's just kind of, the shape itself in a very simple manner. And now we've got this very natural scene. And again, the simplicity, I love that. I love this approach. All of the foliage here with all of these little branches coming out. I really appreciate this style. I find that it's hard for me to sometimes simplify that way and still get a good impression. A lot of dry brush here around these areas. And I'm showing you these by themes. So now it's like landscapes, kind of general, more zoomed out. Notice this, again, very beautiful sense of, sunlight. Maybe even around the sunset, because that's at least what it looks like to me. It looks like the sun is setting. There's very sharp light here on these rocks, and very sharp yellow light here. Another beautiful one. I think there are two of these, from the Grand Canyon, I believe. And this one I really love. And notice how this arch here really makes, by the way, I think it's in the Grand Canyon, though I'm not sure, I think. The arch makes this opening that you can see through, and then there's a lighter value here, a bit of a darkness here as well, and the composition itself works really well, in my opinion. Here's another one that I really love. And notice how all of these cliff sides and ridges have been simplified in such an appealing manner with these strokes here of brush, the purples and the reds here. That's one that I really love as well. Now we've got some florals, and I really like these. The arrangement works really well, and I think look at all these smaller details here with the flowers, and the color selection is beautiful. What I would have done differently is choose a bit more of a range for the greens, a bit more pure blue and yellow, but that works beautifully well because there's a lot of colors already in the other flowers, so I love that. This is another one that I really like, probably even more than this one. I actually really love the redness of the flowers and how they pop in contrast with the green, which are, complementary colors, so it makes for a very strong popping effect. And this may be poppy, so that's interesting. Okay, now we're looking at some more city views or village views, and again, I love this. Look at the negative painting around this tower here. There are some details hinting that this may be like an exit to a dock. This looks like a lighthouse, but it's probably, I'm not sure if it is, but and it's very sketchy and very loose, yet done so well. And also the color scheme works again really well. It's like she has a lot of color schemes, different color schemes she uses for different occasions, and they all work in their own individual kind of universe. You see what I mean? Here's another one with a rather gray color scheme. I love the feeling of this. This is like a marsh, and we've got the boat here sailing through. Really love this one. Notice the sky, also a lot of wet in wet, some work allowing that the paint do some of the work, leaving some highlights here. Just beautiful work. Now we're coming into some winter scenes, and this is actually the final scene that I will review in a bit more depth, is the winter scene. There's a good reason I want to review it. It has to do with realism. So all of the paintings we've seen so far aren't necessarily realistic, but they're a very interesting impression of reality. Notice this red structure here. I love how it contrasts with the blue. A figure here just for some movement and interest. This one I really love. It's like probably again a dock scene. This may be a large, I don't know what you'd call these, like a rig or like just a large boat. Boat enthusiasts, let me know. And notice the simplification here in the details in the background. Love it. And some more winter scenes. I love the feeling as someone who doesn't live in an area that we actually have snow and stuff like that. The winter here is very disappointing in that sense. It's just rain, lots of rain. So this is really a pleasure to watch, really. I love that there's a figure here, some cars here and there. Beautiful. And now we're coming to a scene that's a bit more similar to the final one, and I love the dry brush strokes here showing with the blue, and I think it works really well with the, I guess, birch trees. These kinds of scenes are really something I like. And notice how there's a lot of brush strokes that are very opaque, I guess. I'm not sure if you used literally an opaque paint, or it's just the way it turned out, but it's just beautiful. And another one, very simple, and the composition just works fantastically well. And it goes to show you don't need a lot of space as long as you interpret the scene in an interesting way and an attractive way. You don't need a lot of space for many details. You can be very simplified in your approach. Here's another one. Just love that. All of the light poles, they bring you into the distance. Here we've got some, I guess, trash cans. These stairs. Just a very interesting scene and mood. And finally we come... sorry, lost my voice there for a moment. Finally we come to that final scene. And the reason why I wanted to review this one in a bit more detail is if you take a few steps back, and I challenge you to do that, you'll notice how this one has a very realistic impression. I can zoom out for you as well. and you can see how it really almost reads like a picture. And this is something that recently I talked about in my channel, that like the whole struggle, or not necessarily struggle, but finding the balance between realism and impressionism. And I think many of the paintings we've seen so far are very impressionistic, but with this one you've got a very a balance that skews more towards realism. And it's like, what's realism really about? It's all about the values, the accurate drawing and the values. I talk about it a lot, and this one goes to show, and this the last painting that in the painting process that I posted here, with the warms and cools video, also shows that very well. I think as long as you nail the values right, you will get a realistic impression. It's what it's all about. And with this scene, I think she did just that. It's probably the main thing that leads to this being read as a more realistic scene. The trees are as dark as they should be. The contrast isn't totally exaggerated. It may be a little exaggerated, but I don't think it's significantly exaggerated. We've got these strong shadows on the ground, but the snow is still very bright. And it's good that it's bright because it contrasts with the shadows, so it's probably a realistic impression. We've got all of these trees in the background that really were simplified to just a few brush strokes and blotches and stains, and it works so well. In terms of the composition, it really pulls you in. You feel there's a path for you to get into the painting that works really well. We've got the trees starting very strong and then splitting and leading us in a very interesting and softening manner from bottom to top, I guess. But it's really objective. So you can't. No, subjective. I always confuse these two. Yeah, it's always subjective. So the whole eye movement thing is really personal, and yeah. So and then we have the skies here. Notice the clouds. I just now noticed them actually. So a very interesting composition. Things aren't dead in the center. We've got this line that's about a little under the middle part, the horizon line, and then we've got the trees a bit skewed to the left. They have a movement like that to the left. Hopefully you can see what I'm referring to, like that I think works really well. And this is why I love this scene, and this is why I love all of her works. But with this one, what really popped to mind is the whole realism thing. And for someone who doesn't, I think, strive for realism, as you can see in the other paintings, this one really nails it. And it's just a good example of the tweaks that you need to do to get to that realistic ground if you're searching and aiming to get there, which I am, by the way. So in any case, this is it. I really hope you enjoyed looking at Shari's paintings. Beautiful work. I really hope she sees this. I may send it to her. And I just enjoyed this one a lot. I hope you did as well. And I will wrap up this video now.
So this is it. I really hope you enjoyed this episode of Painting Masters and seeing all of her work. As you can see, you can really blend or blur the edges, the lines, blur the lines, learn how to talk, Liron. Blur the lines between realism, impressionism, looseness, stylized, non-stylized. There isn't a perfect spectrum to place everything on. I think it's all a matter of finding the most authentic way in which you see reality, being very focused and creating in that way. And I think this is something that all successful artists really are capable of doing. And this is why we love it, because we can feel the authenticity of how they see the world and their skills. Of course, I really appreciate skill. There's nothing I can do about it. If something takes no skill, I will be a little more skeptical about it. If it takes no skill, that's also something to talk about. But in any case, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. What else did I want to share? Just make sure to subscribe to my channel if you still haven't. I have 9 episodes going back of Painting Masters. I have the Business Monday. I have the Paint Show 40 plus episodes. So there's a lot of fun things for you to check out here if you just stumbled upon it. I'm really trying to reach more and more people. So if you know someone who will enjoy my videos, if you share it with them, it will really help. Also check out my Patreon page, my podcast. If you enjoy listening to me speak, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And definitely check out the podcast below. There's always this gap between what you feel about what you create and what others feel, because I don't consume my own content. I don't sit down and watch my own videos because it bores me, because it came from me, you see. But I do know a lot of people hopefully enjoy them. So I'm trying to relate to that. And I know a lot of people enjoy the podcast. If you just enjoy listening to me speak, that's the most crazy, humbling thing ever. So thank you so much for that. and I'm rambling. I will wrap up this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in another vid, in another episode of Painting Masters really soon.